Hi everyone, it's Sue Cook here, homeopath. I know that you're on my the Child Brain Whisperer page, but I've met this amazing woman, Mary Beth Skellorn, and I wanted to interview her about the way she practices homeopathy. Very interesting. So, Mary Beth, tell me about how you use kinesiology in your practice.
Well, I to give you an idea of how it became the
Yeah,
case,
yeah.
I trained at the Practical College and finished that training in 96, 97. I did the extra year. And I was practicing, and I came upon Roger Dyson's book, Classical Homeopathy Revisited, which is about the Pritam Singh method of prescribing. And I had lots of questions, and he was working in London, so I asked if I could come and sit in. And I had some treatment with him and sat in for quite a few, probably over a year. And eventually, and the first time I went, I was quite startled to find he was using muscle testing, or muscle response monitoring, as we call it now. I eventually learned what he was doing, and that's how I started using muscle testing with homeopathy. So I now know from training in kinesiology as a modality in its own right that what we were doing then was a very limited, using the muscle testing in a very limited scope. So we would take the case in the usual way and work out what we thought were the most likely remedies to be helpful for what we call our patient's clients. So I'll probably be using that word.
Okay.
And then we would use muscle testing with the client's muscle to narrow down exactly which remedy and potency and dilution, and then send them away with it in the usual way. And we were using some test kits to check whether people had problems with viruses, bacteria, parasites, that sort of thing. And they were made by a kinesiologist called Jane Thurnell Reed. And I saw her advertise a one-day course in London and wondered what she did with the kids. So I went along to the course and realized there were all sorts of holding things they could actually resolve. So barriers to cure, that sort of thing, maintaining causes. And so I hunted around and found a health kinesiologist locally and started having some treatment with her to see what it was like. And eventually I thought, I've really got to learn how to do this. So I did the training for health kinesiology and finished the basic training in 2004. While I was doing that training, I was still using muscle testing in the way I learned from Roger Dyson with my homeopathic clients. And one day, after I'd done because it's a modular course, I'd done a couple of the modules, I had a client come who had been frightened by a gang of kids, not hurt physically, but he was suffering with nausea and vertigo, and he couldn't go to work. So I got out, took his case, but then thought, well, we're probably looking at ailments from fear.
Yeah.
So I got out the top remedies that I thought would be helpful. And I was using his muscle testing, and his system was saying no to everything and yes to everything. And I thought, there's something strange going on here. And then it occurred to me that his system, because I was using muscle testing, it was reading the kinesiology patterns I knew that were rebalancing. And so I then asked, a yes or no question. Do you want something off the kinesiology menu? And I got a yes. And from then on, I realized that the client is actually reading every pattern you've got available, whether it's aromatherapy, whether it's homeopathy, whether it's crystals, whether it's flower essences, corrections that are unique to kinesiology. And you cannot fool them that there isn't something else there for them. And so if you're using muscle testing, you have to open it up and basically let them choose, let their energy system choose. So there are two things I've been thinking for a long time the homeopathic community might be able to have an interesting conversation around. One is using muscle response monitoring with homeopathy, and the other is the fact that what we're doing is an energetic modality, and that's the case with all the alternative treatment systems. We're tapping in to the vibrational nature of the whole of the natural world. Humans are resonant, animals are, plants are, even what we think of inanimate things like stones. They all have a vibrational rate, and that's just a given from physics.
Yep.
And we should be thinking of ourselves as energy medicine.
Yep.
And that increasingly is now actually measurable. So the frequencies that the body works at and the whole of the natural world in health are about 8 to 30 hertz. So they're very low frequencies. Or the harmonics, so patterns that have a much higher hertz can still be healing if they're in a harmonic with the 8 to 30 hertz of the body's normal functioning. If you have to know what harmonics are. So it's like in the musical scale, you've got an eight note octave, and C at one point is the same as C at another, but they are in a harmonic relationship, so they sound different. But you understand that there's a unification there in terms of the vibrational rate of the note. And so and also, so there are these machines that will measure for hands-on healing, even that off the hands of a healer, a range of frequencies are coming, so between 8 and 30 hertz. And the body is benefiting as much as it can from that offer of reset that the 8 to 30 hertz is there offering in the hands of a healer. The problem with what all the modalities do is that if there are blocks in the client system that stop it picking up on that resonance, it can't benefit. And so a lot of what kinesiology corrections do is move the client away from the stressors that are causing static, causing confusion in communication within the system. And so the homeopathy works better if you've got the body in a balance in terms of kinesiology before you set off offering. I don't know how much of that makes sense. There's a lot
it does.
lot of concepts there.
So how do you apply it? Give me examples. So say you have this invisible client here.
Yeah.
You've taken their case. What do you do next?
Well, I will make sure that they're in what we call a working balance in health kinesiology and natural bioenergetics, which is the sort of kinesiology I work with. And all the kinesiologies are based on Chinese medicine, so the concept of the 5 elements is very much common across the whole range, but how people use it is slightly different. So you make sure that all the paired meridians are in balance, and there are reflexes on the body which allow you to touch and then muscle test. The client will unlock, so I usually use a small muscle in the forearm and make sure that that's working properly, that it will lock and unlock. And then the client's usually lying on a couch, and they just have to hold their hand up in the air, and the upper arm is supported on the couch, and then I'm putting about 2 pounds of pressure on the arm. And if there's balance on the reflex, we're touching the arm will stay locked. And if there's a problem with balance there, it will unlock. And then there are a range of acupoints you hold, and you test through those and work out which set you're holding. Hold them, recheck that there's now balance when you touch that reflex. And it's a very quick process. It takes about a minute to do.
I was going to ask you how long that takes.
Yeah. I mean, when you're learning, it can be the major part of a session, but it means the client's probably in balance for the first time in maybe a very long time. In that respect, and so they will start to feel improvements after even just a working balance session.
Yeah, without even any remedies, you mean?
Yeah, quite often. But usually there's plenty of time within an hour to then offer your menu of corrections, and the client will then select because they can
Do you mean with their body?
With their muscle testing. So they I often say to them, you can, if you want to know what I'm what I'm asking, because I ask the questions out loud to hold only one in my head at a time.
Yeah.
And then what happens is that I'm will either lock or unlock. And it's a binary conversation I'm having, offering a range of different corrections, including homeopathy. And if homeopathy is the most important thing for them at that point, I will then find out where the remedy is, because I've got them in different boxes. And then I'm just holding my hand over the box and dividing it in half and then quarters until we find the remedy. And then I ask verbally what they want to do with it, because sometimes they want to read it but not take it.
Do you mean read the Materia Medica?
No, just have it resting on an energetic, on a
Yeah.
point that the system will specify, and the system wants to read the energy pattern
Okay.
and reset itself in that
Without
way.
even taking it?
Yeah.
Wild.
And other times they will want to have it as part of a pattern with some other energy factors. So it could be with a flower essence or an aromatherapy oil, or a tested thought, a thought tested up upwardness, which matches a stressor. That's probably the mental or emotional behind why the physical body's thrown out symptoms. And you get the whole pattern working at the same time, fixing a number of circuits in their system. But mostly, I find homeopathy will test up if people are ill with a virus or a bacteria, if they've had a recent physical accident, or if they have had a shock on some other level, emotional shock. First aid is its forte, homeopathy.
Oh, absolutely.
And when you think about how Hahnemann started using it, he was using a first aid remedy.
Yeah.
China is...
Oh, it's amazing.
It's an intermittent fever, and also a dehydration remedy. And a lot of the early remedies are ones we use all the time for first aid.
Yeah.
And the client will tell you exactly how to prepare it. So what the dilution is, what the potency is, how often they want to take it, for how long, if they want to then go on to something else. And you don't have to do any guessing. Yeah. Which is maybe a harsh way to describe the years of experience most people have accrued. Yeah. But in the end, all those wobbles that we have after we've seen a client, did I find out enough information? Did they tell me everything? Have I thought thoroughly enough about this? Yes. Yeah. What are the implications of that I couldn't really see in the remedy picture? Yeah. And all of that gets put to bed because the client has selected the remedy by reading the energy pattern of it. And so we have to get our heads around the idea that each remedy has an energy pattern. When you combine them, they also have a frequency or a vibrational rate. And the client will put together, I find often, remedies that make sense given what I know about them or what I then look up. But I would never have come to them.
Can you give me an example?
Thinking about the remedies that come up now for people with virus. So whatever it might be a variant of coronavirus, it might just be the virus of the season. Yep. But at the moment, causticum will usually test up if people have viral symptoms. So they might have fever, they might have digestive stuff, they might have a cough or upper respiratory tract symptoms. And some or all of those, they might be quite ill, need to be in bed, feeling awful, mental depression, there's that side of viral stuff. Yeah. Or they might be still going to work, but just feeling off. Yeah. And so causticum is the constant, and then there's often a bowel nosode now, and that's really only in the last few months. Right. And then there might be natrum sulfur comes up quite a lot, and this is in a combination. Ferrum floss often comes up now. Hepar will come up sometimes. But it can be a range, it won't just be, hardly ever is it just one remedy. Yeah. Whereas at the start in spring of 2020, when people were ill, I saw somewhere online a very brief post, because it was taken down by Sankaran, saying he'd been working with people in Iran who had coronavirus, and the remedy that made the most sense for him with his knowledge was camphor. Oh. And I tested that, and wow, it was the remedy.
Gosh.
And everybody who was ill wanted camphor 200, and they probably wanted it once an hour for 12 hours for at least one day, and then they might reduce the frequency. If people are really ill, they'd want it every 30 minutes for 12 hours. And that 12-hourly dosage for people who are ill is not uncommon, and I would never know to do that.
Yeah.
And it can be quite high potencies. It'll be 10 m's, LM's, whatever
Really?
suits them, yeah. And then around, towards autumn in 2020, people started wanting camphor 10m. And that was the constant for a while. And then around 2021, sometime, causticum started popping up.
Uh-huh.
And that was the remedy. And I think the distress of that period was then layered with this heavy grief.
Yeah,
and
very
so
much.
the virus, or whatever it is, now was carrying this other energy pattern of grief. And so camphor, I did attend a few online like hint meetings, and they were repertorizing really well, and camphor, I never saw anyone say anything about camphor.
Yeah, it's
and I would not have known that that was going to work without the muscle testing. I might have tried it because Sankaran had recommended.
Yeah.
I mean, that post was probably up for less than 24 hours, so I don't know how many people saw it.
I didn't see it.
So the muscle testing, I have learned so much from clients about what their systems require. I wouldn't attempt. I mean, it would be arrogance for me to attempt to choose a remedy. I mean, I sometimes think when someone's texted me and they're not feeling well, because you can tap in across space.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a quantum physics issue, which is hard to explain in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But, so I've got clients in India and Australia and North America, and I never met them, and I can't post them a remedy either. It wouldn't get there.
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't get there now, which is when they need the remedy.
Yeah.
So I tend to get them to make remedies with a glass of water and the remedy written down for them. And they all do it, and they all recover.
It's amazing,
and
isn't it?
It's just, there are a lot of sort of step change things you have to take on board. But once you've got experience of it working, you wouldn't want to not use it.
Yeah.
It's just so accurate. I don't know what else to say at the moment.
I just find this absolutely fascinating because I'm a real old-fashioned homeopath. I graduated in '99 and I still use my books. I don't use a computer. And I just practice in a really old-fashioned way. Yeah. And like you say, there is always that, have I got this right thing when you prescribe? So to take away the doubt, like you say, is definitely...
Well, it just makes working with people much less of a responsibility. I mean, there's still an honor to it.
Yeah.
Know? But because their system is choosing the remedy, and with the time, not very much time of doing it like that, you find how accurate they are. They don't tend to aggravate. They might do a little detox, but they don't aggravate. And I've certainly been through some horrendous aggravations in my time.
Especially with skin symptoms.
Well, that was my problem.
Yeah.
That's what led me into using homeopathy. And it also honors what needs to be happening now. Even the medical profession is realizing that people's lifestyle is what's making them ill.
Yeah.
There are traumas which make it difficult to recover, but lifestyle is such a huge component. I don't know if you're aware of the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine, but they are usually younger doctors, so young GPs. A lot of them are. And you can join as a homeopath. There are a few, an acupuncturist. You can be an associate member. So I have attended a lot of their webinars, and they have 6 pillars of lifestyle everyone needs to be working on all the time: your diet, your exercise, making sure you sleep well.
It's all the Ayurveda stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people have to take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
And if we're remaining in that rather medical model of, I'm the expert, I have the knowledge, and I will tell you what I think you need,
Yeah.
and you go away and take it. And I still know homeopaths who won't tell their clients what they're taking.
I always tell mine.
Because that's there. I mean, everything is there. There are no secrets in kinesiology.
Yeah.
You tell the client everything that you're finding out through the testing.
Yeah.
And it's sort of ethically wrong, I think, not to do that.
Yeah.
Yes, people will go and look it up, but if you've chosen it with muscle testing, their system has chosen it.
Yeah, they know anyway, don't they?
And energetically, they have chosen it. They don't need to know. We need to know about our remedies. So all the study people do, all the background information they have from years of practicing in the conventional way, none of that is wasted at all. And with any other energy patterns you might occasionally use, or you've had some training in like flower essences or crystals, those patterns, you have to know the energy of them. So you have to put them in what we call our energy library by holding them, reading about them, getting a feel for the energy, which is something people are more or less aware of. I am totally not aware of it, but other people can feel the energy coming off of the stuff we use.
Yeah.
And the client is now in charge. They are driving the process.
Yeah.
And that's the way around it ought to be.
Yeah, definitely.
And then because in kinesiology there are what we call adjunctive, so changes to lifestyle. Those are things you can't do in the session. So it will test up the client that they need to change something about the environment they're sleeping in, or they need to do more exercise of a certain type, and it tests up how often and what they should do. And they have to be motivated to do that.
Yeah.
And if they think it's all happening magically without their knowledge, it's hard to convince them.
And it's actually disempowering, isn't it? Because if they know that they need to do something and they do it and then they improve, they are empowered by that, aren't they?
Exactly.
They've got the evidence.
Yes. And so we have a technique where we index how much of the value from the whole session will be based on them doing their adjunctive out of 100%. And I find it, of all the thousands of things that can test up in a session, energetically, if it tests up that they need to make a change, it's going to be more than 50% of the benefit.
Wow.
And that helps them, and then you can test through lists of possible areas which will benefit in their life or in their physical system, and give them a bit more information of where they can expect to see some change happening while they do the adjunctive. So there's a way of motivating and helping people shift their idea that they're ill out of the blue, not anything to do with them. They go to the doctor, they come to us, and we fix them, and that isn't the way it works. We have a lot of knowledge about energy patterns, and most of them are based on the cornucopia of patterns in the natural world, which we should be living in, and we're not. So we bring them indoors, we potentize them, which improves some of the energetic quality, and then we're offering them to the client, and they're choosing. Whereas their system would be scanning. If we list all the hunter-gatherers who still live out of doors, they're so much healthier than those of us who spend our time indoors. The more you learn about physics and how the body reads patterns, the more it makes sense that we're our own worst enemy. In the way we choose to live, the treats we give ourselves, the reasons we put off looking after ourselves, even though we know we feel better after we've done it. So it's I've learned so much from using muscle testing.
How do we learn? So say I wanted to learn how to do that.
Well, a lot of people will learn to muscle test by doing a Touch for Health course. Have you heard of Touch for Health?
Yes, I have, and I have done a kinesiology course years ago, probably 30-something years ago.
Yes. And so the
with
basics.
the latissimus dorsi muscle, mainly, I think.
Yes, yeah. So you test that by
Yeah.
having your arm against your side, and if the muscle is not operating, then you can't keep it in. And if you pinch into it and spindle and confuse the nerve endings, the muscle will unlock, and then you smooth it out, and it will lock again. You know that can be used as a what we call an indicator muscle. So you could ask yes/no questions after that, offering corrections menu, whatever you do. And if you do a limited range of things, that's still valuable. So I have had clients early on in using the larger modality of kinesiology who just wanted homeopathy. That's what people knew me for, and that's how word of mouth brought them to me. And so I would say to them, I will use muscle testing. This is how it works, and let them feel locking and unlocking. And then I would ask their system, given that we're only using homeopathic remedies, can we make a change in this symptom picture? And if I got a yes, then I knew they were going to benefit. And so I sort of did a deal with their system that whatever else it was reading in the room was just asking for homeopathy. And so you can, it's about intention. So muscle testing, you've got your energy patterns. You intend to work with the client, which is how distant working operates. And with their permission, which is the vital ethical part of it, their conscious permission, you make sure that they're in balance. You can do that as a surrogate exercise using self-testing. And then the intention allows you to work with someone's energy system. But to learn, apart from doing a Touch for Health course where you learn certain sorts of balancing techniques, and some people just stay with Touch for Health, you can train within each of the different types of kinesiology you might have encountered. And they will refine your muscle testing skills because you'll be using them with clients if you've already got a practice going. And so I teach what's called natural bioenergetics, and the first is a 2-day course. You learn to self-test, and you're testing this big muscle in the top of the thigh called the quadriceps, which is when it unlocks, there's no doubt it's unlocking. And when it locks again, but you then learn to test smaller muscles when you're working with clients, because you have to keep resting these big muscles on longer levers because they get tired. And as you're learning in that 2-day course, you also learn a variety of first aid techniques, so how to turn off an allergic reaction. We're not allowed to use that word, allergy, but the body doesn't understand the pattern that it's encountered, that it's set off sometimes responses. Quite difficult symptoms. And that you just get on and tap some of the acupuncture points for stomach and spleen, and for bladder, kidney, because they will deal with the adrenaline problem in the body and the histamine problem in the body.
Well,
there are
so
some
important.
corrections around helping you to identify and erase out of your system self-limiting beliefs, which are the basis of most of why people are ill. I mean, I think basically people are ill because they do not believe and know that innate knowing that they are unconditionally lovable. And that's where it all starts to fall apart.
Absolutely.
Health-wise. And so a lot of those self-limiting beliefs will be moving around that central issue of not being lovable. Or thinking you're not lovable. I mean, everyone is like a human right. We are all
lovable,
unconditionally lovable.
I'm a big fan of Marissa Peer, the hypnotherapist, and she does a lot of work around I am enough, because she says that a lot of people don't believe they are, and that's the same thing about being lovable, isn't it? I'm not lovable, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, and that does completely mess up people's lives because they then create a life around those beliefs. And
oh yes, you attract what you believe. And we have a lot of patterns we've acquired about what's normal, like what is our comfort zone in terms of how
Yeah.
we ought to be interacting in the world with people. And so we get very stuck in
Yeah.
in feeling comfortable, I mean horribly comfortable, in abusive relationships,
Yes.
for instance, because we know how they work, we've grown up around them, and
Yeah.
and we have that belief that we don't deserve, you know,
Yeah.
something different. We don't know it exists maybe on
Yeah.
an energetic level.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot of work people can do just for themselves once they can self-test around those sort of key issues.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm loving it. I'm loving hearing all this. It's brilliant. It's exactly what we need, isn't it? I think especially over the past 3.5 years, I think it's been traumatizing going through what we have. And like you say, when we moved out of camphor into causticum, if you're looking at the sort of genus epidemicus of it, then yeah, it's we're all traumatized to a degree, aren't we? Unless we can address that with whatever.
Yeah. I mean, even I now think when I go somewhere, and I haven't been ill for ages and ages, but I go somewhere and there are lots of people, and it does occasionally occur to me that we're probably all passing germs around each other. And I'm not afraid of illness. You know, I wasn't worried about coronavirus for myself, my family, for my clients. I just don't. I think what really flipped the switch for me before I ever did any homeopathic training, I used it at home with my kids, and had my little first aid book, and all of them stepped on a rusty nail or cut themselves on corrugated iron in the garden or something, and I hadn't had them vaccinated. Because, you know, that one of my problem when I went to the homeopathic hospital, one of the doctors said, well, vaccination, you know, can set off problems with the skin. And I really didn't want that in my children. So I sort of took a deep breath and thought, right, we're going to go this way. And then when they stepped on a nail, it really made me wobbly, you know, because tetanus is not a nice illness. No. But I got out the book and looked it up, and there was Lidum, and I had 30s in my homeopathic kit, and I gave them as per 3 times a day, and they all just got better. Yeah. And after that I thought, well, I really don't need to worry about this, do I?
Yeah, exactly.
And and so it's really hard. I hated the mask wearing thing. I didn't go places because I didn't want to wear a mask. I hated seeing people in them. Yeah. It's just the energy around that just felt terrible to me. Yeah. And you still occasionally see people with masks, and I'm thinking, oh, you poor soul, you're you know, so, but you know, you're so asking to be, you know, you're just sort of frightened. I mean, fear is another big problem.
Fear's a killer.
It undermines.
Stress is a killer. Yeah.
Doubt undermines the immune system. So in Chinese medicine, there are key sets of emotions which undermine each of the 5 elements, and stomach and spleen are the earth element. And doubt, brooding, worry, alienation, cynicism, those are terrible emotions for the immune system. So it's like a perfect storm of undermining everyone's immune system by the messages going out, and what they might have been able to do without that, who knows, but it was just whipped away from us. And fear upsets the bladder and kidney meridians, and they're so important again for adrenaline illness. And when usually they're disabled, those parts of the system, when you're in those states. So
I always wonder what it's like for people who don't have homeopathy in their lives. How do they cope?
No.
How do they get through life?
I don't know. I've always reckoned that people fall into 2 camps. They're either afraid of illness, and it's likely to make you die.
Yeah.
Or it's probably about how they were treated as children. They were put to bed and nursed and given lots of drinks and maybe read a few more stories than normal, and they were expected to get well. And so you're either afraid of illness or you're not. Yeah. And if you're afraid of it, you're busy having every vaccine you're offered and making sure you don't go anywhere before you want to be well for something. And I have one friend who I saw her for the first time in 4 years the other day, And I was actually shocked that she came along because we were actually indoors as well. She'd refused to come to anything that wasn't out of doors.
Yeah.
And so she just hadn't been out of her house.
Gosh, that's awful.
And it's just, and the talk for her, whenever we've got together in the past, has been about who's ill and which doctor they're seeing.
No.
Your life becomes very sort of small in terms of what you can do, and it's unfortunate, but mindset is a big problem.
Yeah, and being aware of where you're at, because so many people are not aware of what's going on with them.
No, well, I mean, we're not taught that the body works energetically at school. Yes, it is chemical. Yes, it is mechanical.
Yeah.
But above all, it's energetic. So every cell is creating a frequency as it functions, and it's trying to read every other frequency, given whatever blocks there are from trauma lodged in tissue or static from picking up on frequencies outside of the body. And it's trying to entrain to its tissue area, and the tissue areas are trying to entrain to their organs, and the organs to their systems. And we've got this 8 to 30 hertz in health operating, and the idea that it's not there at all and we're not working with it is sort of, I mean, it's hard to row back to not knowing about it.
Yeah.
It's sort of been hard for me to think about how to start a conversation with colleagues who haven't been taught to think that way.
Yeah.
Because there are so many concepts you have to lay down first of all.
Yeah.
But that is, the world is vibrating out there.
Yeah.
And if we're out there, we pick up on, the healing capacities in those, if we need those patterns.
Yeah.
And our system isn't filtered by other sort of mindset issues and morphic fields and things like that, which stop us reading.
Tell me about the static and the white noise that you just talked about.
Well, people can be out of balance within their own system.
Yeah.
And in Chinese medicine, you talk about the Shen cycle as the nurturing cycle, and it operates when you're working with it to try and harmonize the communication within the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual part of the individual. And then we're in a soup of energy patterns.
Yeah.
So a lot of them are nurturing, and we want to take advantage of those if we need them. Mainly they're generated in the natural world. And then a lot of them can be unbalancing, so they can be microbes which don't belong wherever they've got in the body, or they might be commensals which have got into the wrong place, and they are directing what goes on in that tissue area.
Yeah.
They could be a past trauma which should stay in the past, but
it's still in the body.
Well, it's in your energy
field,
and it's still there, unprocessed, to the point where if something similar happens, and it can be quite slight in terms of the stress it might look like when you identify it, but it's enough to make that past trauma resonate. So you'll get an example of that might be somebody who suddenly develops psoriasis, which is quite often the case with that condition after a trauma.
Yeah.
And why that trauma was dramatic enough. I mean, I had one client who, as a child, was throwing a ball for her dog, and the ball got lodged in the dog's throat, and the dog died.
Oh my goodness.
And boom, psoriasis.
Oh.
And that is an example of where there's probably some trauma in the past, which, and here we might be talking generations. We might be talking lifetimes, if that's a concept people are happy with. Sometimes you have to find a way to talk about what happened in the past and how long ago it was.
Yeah.
But it just reactivates, and you're back into that very suddenly, that quite
trauma,
quite big symptom picture.
Yeah, wow.
Or it can be what I call entrainment. So you can think of it as reacting to the distress in another person. So being overly sympathetic and feeling, which is always unbalancing if you feel someone else's emotional state. you can know about it intellectually and you can be helpful, but if you're feeling it's going to be unbalancing for you, 9 times out of 10. But we also entrain to other people, so our caregivers, as children, as babies, and there's a lot of evidence that people who live together, even in later life, they slipstream off each other's physiology.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're getting that benefit and the nurturing of what it is to be a human and to live in this family and to survive in this society. And so all of that can be helpful and nurturing, but it's a whole package. So we're entrained to their pluses and their minuses.
Yeah.
And as we get older, the minuses can hold us stuck in a place where you might, on a DNA level, call it the tendency in the family to myopia or something like constipation or IBS or, in a horrible way, cancer. But it's an energetic thing as well. And we can work at it from the energetic end by allowing the client there's scope for different ways to go into the problem, which you offer the client to set up a working session, and then they choose that and they choose the energy pattern. They're setting intention all the time about where they need to work. And their system has identified that it's an entrainment when you're first doing your balance at the start of the session. We can get stuck resonant with a pattern that isn't ours intrinsically. It's sort of originated outside of us, but we are, and it tends to trump energy work. So when you're working with something like homeopathy and that's operating, you get a response and then you're back to square one, and a response and you're back to square one. I used to tear my hair out. What is going on?
It's like a maintaining course of sorts, isn't it? Until you work out what it is energetically by the method that you're using. They're going to keep going around that cycle, aren't they?
And even if you know it's a maintaining cause, you need to have a way of offering the client energy patterns that will help them disconnect, disentangle. So in the quantum physics terminology, they talk about entanglement. And entrainment is like a physics way of describing what entanglement is. And you can disentangle from a minus that is a problem without losing the nurturing connection. So, we're in an absolute soup of not just EMFs, but all sorts of different energy patterns out there that, like common traumas, they have an energy. And one way of describing that is to call it a morphic field. So there are these, you can measure some morphic fields because they're so large. And there are these machines called random odd generators that are doing even odd, flip-flop, flip-flop, flip-flop. And they're all around the world. People who study PSI, so psi, the paranormal activity, are very interested in how they react to major news events. So things like the death of Princess Diana. What was a flip-flop, flip-flop, went flip, 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 flip. And you could see energetically there was a power, an energetic power in physics, in a vibrational way, which many, many people were being affected by. And all the common traumas that people suffer from have got that sort of morphic field, and you can get stuck resonant with that. So being abandoned or abused or anything you can think of that people suffer with. And diagnosis has a big morphic field. So people are told they've got and then they join the self-help group. That's got a morphic field. None of it is about
healing.
Getting better.
No.
I've
noticed that.
It's, not intentionally, but just that's the way it works. You've bought into something which, especially if
it just keeps it going,
has the word incurable or life-changing. And you have to untangle people from that. And it's not a conscious, it's an energetic entanglement that they need to be. I give them the information if that's where we're working, if I can see that's what's happening from the corrections their system chooses. But you can't, it's one of the reasons why the talking therapies have got a limit as well. on a conscious level, we can understand something. It doesn't mean energetically it doesn't still impact on us.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be gained from working energetically.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why I wanted to talk to you about this, because I think it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I'd love for people to know more about it and
yeah,
learn, have a go and see what difference it makes. I mean, I know from watching other kinesiology schools that there's a tendency for us to try and choose for the client. So the strategies that that we're thinking through, rather than offering the menu and just choosing with muscle testing where to work. And so it's quite a big barrier to let go of the idea that our conscious mind knows best, because it simply doesn't.
Yeah.
And there's this, it's a small part of what we could be tapping into.
Yeah.
It's important. We have to learn the menu, learn the muscle testing, learn how to run your practice, learn how to interact with clients so that they feel comfortable and are, feeling able to feel the benefit from the work. And so everything you learn about being a professional and working to a code of ethics, and all of that is really important. Yeah. But we could do with opening it all out.
So how do we do your 2-day course?
Well, I tend to teach in person at the moment, although you can learn online. And I have a really good venue in my village here in Suffolk, which I mean, that's where I've been teaching now for a couple of years. And so I've booked some dates in March for that foundation weekend. And then there are 6 modules that I teach to qualification for people who want to become practitioners.
In the same way you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will have learnt some muscle testing, particularly if they're learning the modality online. It's helpful you have to do it with people, and in order to really become confident. It's sort of like any muscle memory activity, like a sport or playing a musical instrument. The more you do it, the quicker the whole thing is for you, and the more you can you have to get your head out of the muscle testing. So you take the case, you know what's going on, you have your background information from your experience and the A and B and the pathology Then you put that all over there in the corner and you muscle test.
Yeah.
And the client system is informed by that, because you're working as an energetic unit.
Yeah.
And they choose off the range of what you're offering them. And if you try and you have to do a deal on that energetic level, if you're not going to offer everything eventually you will get garbage in your muscle testing, because they're reading a pattern you're not offering. And that's the one they want. So.
Yeah. That is so interesting.
Yeah. So, I teach in person, and then, eventually if there are enough people who want to learn further afield, and travel is a barrier. Learning online is great. You do have to sit there in front of a screen, which is
limiting.
Not great for everybody.
Yeah.
You don't get the social interaction at coffee time and that sort of thing. But you can learn the whole modality online.
Yeah.
And I will eventually offer it that way.
Brilliant. Wow.
But if people want to know more, I'm happy to be contacted.
How can people contact you?
Well, I have my email is my name, MB, M for Mary, B for Beth, and Skellorn, which is the surname, and it's at gmail.com.
At gmail.com, did you say? Yeah.
So my surname is Skellorn for November. So it's MB Skellorn at gmail.com. And if people email, I will send them details about whatever. I answer questions, send them details, do a quick Zoom meetup if they want to have a conversation. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So I have tried writing an article for one of the journals. I think I pitched it. I didn't really know how to ramp it down to the basics.
Yeah.
And I think I need to probably try and do that again. But great to be able to do an interview like this. Thank you
Oh,
very, very
you're welcome.
much.
It's fun. It's really fun. I love listening to what people have got to say. And
you're a very good interviewer.
Oh, thank you. Bless your heart.
You keep bringing me back to the things I haven't covered, and that's great.
Thank you. So we'll leave that there now, everyone. But if you've got the information for Mary Beth, and I'll link it below for you as well. Thank you.